Books. Most of us love them, and some people absolutely hate them. I'm looking at you, the state of Florida. Growing up, I was never an avid reader, at least not compared to my sister, but I did read enough where I had a few personal favorites, and one I absolutely hated with every fiber of my being. But more on that later. I thought it would be fun to rank some childhood books I grew up reading, but then I thought it would be more fun if I opened up the floor to you guys, my lovely viewers. So about a week ago, I made a post on my community tab saying, "Hey guys, can you give me the names of some books/book series you read in elementary school that you either really liked or just saw a lot of?" All ages welcome, of course, but I'm especially keen on hearing back from people who went to elementary school around the same time as me, the 2000s. And you guys more than delivered. I got way more responses than I thought I would. It was really hard to pick since you guys gave me a lot of good options, but in the end, I narrowed it down to 40-ish. The ones that got mentioned multiple times, the ones I also grew up reading, and the ones I didn't read but did see a lot of growing up. So here's our beautiful tier list. But before we get started, let me explain the tiers to you guys a little bit. The top tier is called 1,000 Years Duck, which I named after an old meme I'm currently obsessed with. This tier is for the best of the best, like the stuff I personally feel defined my childhood and probably your guys's too. I like some of it are for the books I only kind of liked, or book series that I started off liking but just fizzled out of. I like the artwork are for the books I never read, but I did see a lot of at the library, and whenever I looked at the cover I'd always go, "The art for this is pretty cool." I do not know this man, which I named after the meme of Keke Palmer not knowing who Dick Cheney is.
Just say it, I hope I don't sound ridiculous. I don't know who this man is.
This tier are for the books I had never heard of, or just have no true feelings on, like not even the cover art does anything for me. And last but not least is Go Straight to Hell, which I made specially for one book on this list, but more on that later. Anyways, let's get to the ranking. So the first book on this list is Frindle, and immediately I'm going to put that in 1,000 Years Stuck because Frindle is a very iconic book. I feel like everyone knows what this is, at least people in my age demographic. And if you don't know, the basic plot summary is that this kid is kind of a smartass, and in order to annoy his teacher, he starts calling the pen a Frindle, and it evolves into this whole thing, and it ends with Frindle becoming a word on the dictionary. So yeah, 1,000 Years Stuck, because I feel like everyone knows what this book is. Next book on this list is A Teacher from the Black Lagoon, and once again, I'm putting it in 1,000 Years Stuck because this is one of those iconic childhood books, again, at least for my generation. So it's basically about this kid who's starting a new year in school, and he's imagining his new teacher to be this scary crocodile-esque monster, but in the end it's revealed she's actually very nice, and he's very happy about it. And it evolves into this whole book series where he just makes assumptions about what his new thing is going to be, like new gym coach, new science teacher. He imagines them to be scary monsters, but in the end they're revealed to be really nice people. And I think there was a chapter book series spin-off to this where the teachers actually were monsters. Correct me if I'm wrong. A book series that got mentioned a lot in the comments is Percy Jackson. So here's my personal relationship with Percy Jackson. In the 5th grade, I read The Lightning Thief and went, "Wow, this book is amazing. I can't wait to read the rest of the series." And then I just never did. I don't know what happened. I really liked that first book, and I thought I was gonna get into the rest of the series. But I personally think because it was the 5th grade, I was transitioning out of children's books and into the YA genre. In junior high, I was really big into the Hunger Games and the Lunar Chronicles. So I just kind of left book series like Percy Jackson behind. So naturally, you'd think I'd put Percy Jackson in I like some of it because I really liked that first book and have not read any of the sequels. However, I do still hope to one day finish the series. Currently, I'm watching the Percy Jackson TV show on Disney+, and I think season 1 covers all of the first book. I really hope to finish Sea of Monsters at the very least before season 2, so I'm not completely oblivious to anything. And so I'm gonna put Percy Jackson in 1,000 Years Duck because really like the first book. Pretty sure the sequels are just as good. Another thing that got mentioned a lot is Roald Dahl stories. So me personally, I never grew up reading the books. My relation to those stories are the film adaptations. So I grew up watching Matilda and Charlie and the Chocolate Factory. Didn't watch The Witches as a kid, but I did see it recently and I thought it was pretty good. So I'm going to put Roald Dahl in. I liked some of it because even though I haven't read any of the books, I do like the movie adaptations. Next series on this list is A to Z Mysteries. So I didn't read these growing up. I did see them a lot in passing in the library, and I thought the art was pretty cool. So I'm just going to put them in I like the artwork, because I know nothing about them, and I do like the cover art, so that's where they belong. The next book series is Hatchet. So I'm not sure if this is the same for everyone else, but in the 3rd grade, they gave us these big textbooks for reading class, which was just filled with short stories, and I think the first chapter of Hatchet was one of those stories. So the basic summary is, after surviving a plane crash, this kid is just stranded in the Canadian wilderness, and he has to rely on his survival skills until he's rescued at the end of the summer. I didn't read the first book entirely, just that one chapter from the big textbook. However, in the 5th grade, I did read the sequel, Brian's Winter. The plot of that is basically a what-if story where what if he didn't get rescued at the end of the summer and had to spend the fall and the winter in that same wilderness. It was really intense. I think he had to fight wolves or a bear at one point. He had to keep himself alive and not freeze to death. Yeah, very intense book. Didn't read the 2 books that come after that, so I'm going to put Hatchet in I liked some of it because read and liked the sequel, read the first chapter of the first book from that big reading book, and did not read the other 2. Next is A Series of Unfortunate Events. So I never read these books growing up, and I barely remember what the movie was about, except that the leech scene traumatized me as a kid, and I didn't watch the Netflix show, so I'm gonna put it in I like the artwork because I genuinely think the art in the cover art is rendered pretty well. Up next is Warrior Cats. So believe it or not, I had never heard of this book series until this year. Yeah, I guess my entire, everyone talks about how nostalgic Warrior Cats is to them as kids, but I guess it had just missed me entirely throughout my entire childhood. I had only heard about this because one of my favorite creators on TikTok made an entire video about the religion system in Warrior Cats, and the whole time it was just like, what the hell is she talking about? So yeah, my only relation to Warrior Cats is that one TikTok, but it did get mentioned a lot in the comments, so I'm sure it's nostalgic to a bunch of you guys. Me personally, I'm gonna put this in I do not know this man because I genuinely had never heard of this at all. Up next is Animorphs, and once again, I didn't grow up reading these. However, I have to put this in I like the artwork because those covers never fail to make me laugh. And even if you didn't read Animorphs, you definitely know about the covers and how ridiculous they are. I saw Fablehaven get mentioned a few times in the comments, and I, once again, have never heard of this book series. It looks cool, though. I like the artwork, so I'm going to put this in I like the artwork. Next is Deltora Quest. Once again, I would put this in I do not know this man because I never read these books growing up. Did see them a lot in passing. However, one of my favorite games on the Scholastic Kids website was the Deltora Quest game, where it's just like this silhouetted figure jumping around from one spot to another, swinging on ropes and stuff. I played the shit out of that as a kid, so because of that, I'm going to put this in I like some of it, because even though I virtually have no idea what the books are about. I really did like that game. So yeah. Up next is Judy Moody, and that's a quick one. I do not know this man. I never read these books growing up, and that's because I think they were after my time. Alright, Where the Red Fern Grows. I'm gonna put that in I do not know this man because I didn't read that book as a kid. I am aware it's a dog dies story similar to Old Yeller. Up next is The Magic School Bus, and of course it's gonna go in the 1,000 Years Duck because why the fuck would it not? You either watched the TV show or read the books or both. Up next is the I Survive series, which I think only got mentioned once in the comments. However, once is enough for me because these books are fucking intense. The whole premise is just like kids surviving famous historical disasters. The one I read as a kid was the Titanic one. Not sure if they're still making these books, but I think one of the newer ones is about how a girl survives the Great Molasses Flood, which was a real disaster. Look it up. I'm going to put this in I liked some of it because I did like the Titanic book and I didn't really read any of the other books. So up next is 39 Clues. Normally I'd put this in I do not know this man because I never read these books growing up. However, I did see them a lot in the library, and whenever I'd see them, I'd say, wow, the cover is so cool. It makes me almost want to read the books, but not enough. So I think I'm gonna put this in I like the artwork, Dear Dumb Diary. So this is the first of 3 diary-based book series on this list. I really think the artwork is very cute, very funny. I think I'm gonna put this in I like the artwork. Up next is How to Eat Fried Worms. So remember how earlier I mentioned that I created the Go Straight to Hell tier specifically for one book on this list? Well, this is that book. I hated this book growing up. Even in the 3rd grade when I first read this book, I was like, this is fucking stupid. What a nothing concept for a book. He just eats worms to like win money. It's like, also, this strikes me as kind of a fetishy thing. I don't know who the writer or the author was, but they strike me as kind of a pervert, so yeah. How to Eat Fried Worms, Go Straight to Hell. Up next is the Wayside School series. So the whole book series is basically about this school that was built wrong. So originally construction workers were building a school that was 1 floor and 30 rooms each. However, they read the blueprint wrong and instead made a school that was 30 stories tall and 1 room each. I remember this book series was really big as a kid. Our class did an entire themed project on this. Oddly enough, I don't really remember that much about the book series. The only thing I truly remember are the teachers. I remember one of them is like, her thing was that she was nice most of the times, but whenever a student did something bad, she would just like explode in anger. And then another teacher was like a witch of some sort. Even though I don't necessarily remember most of this book series, I'm still going to put this in I like some of it because I like the memories of like doing school projects based on this book. No childhood tier list would probably be complete without mentioning Harry Potter. I struggled with even considering putting this on the list because, you know, J.K. Rowling is a piece of shit human. But this whole franchise is very nostalgic to lots of people, so I just included it anyways. Growing up, I was never that big of a Potterhead. I watched the movies, but they were never really my favorite. Like, I'd watch them if they were on TV, but I would never like personally say, hey, can we watch Harry Potter? I'd probably pick something else. Also, I didn't read any of the books. I think the cover for the books are pretty cool. And also I chose this image specifically because it's so funny. Like, it looks like he's about to be hit by a train.
Take that fake apology and shove it right up your Harry.
I don't know who did this, but I love you. I don't know where to put Harry Potter because I want to put it in I like the artwork because the artwork is very cool, but I know too much about this book series. I know too much about the entire franchise just for it to be there. I'm going to put this in I like some of it because, you know, the movies, never my favorite, but we'll watch them if they're on TV. Another thing I saw a lot in the comments was the homework machine. I don't remember any of the characters' names, but I do remember the basic plot. It's about this child genius who, despite being as smart as like a college student, is not allowed to skip grades, and he just feels very demeaned having to do homework that's below his intelligence level. So he creates this homework machine that does the homework for him so he can focus on other things. I think I'm going to put this in I like some of it, because even though I don't remember that much about it, I remember really liking the story. My Side of the Mountain was a book I also saw a lot of in the comments, and I had never heard of this book series before, but I was a little curious to know what it's about, so I googled the plot synopsis, and in my opinion, it's basically Hatchet but less severe. This book was also written in like the 50s, I think, and the thing about 50s characters is they tend to annoy me, especially if they're kids, because 50s kid characters tend to be written like, "Golly gee willikers, mister." But again, I've never read this book, so I can't really say what the kids' character is like, so I'm gonna put this book series in. Wait, is it even a book series, or is it just that one book? Well, whatever it is, it's going, and I do not know this man. Alright, we're almost halfway through the list, and we've already covered a wide range of territory. And the next book on the list is the Ramona books by Beverly Cleary. Remember that reading book I mentioned that had Hatchet in it? Well, this book also had the first chapter of Ramona Forever, and that's what got me hooked on the entire Ramona series. I don't remember which stories belong where, but as a kid, I remember my favorite was the one where her house is being re-renovated and there's just a giant hole on the wall, and then she tells her class about it and they accuse her of being a liar, and even her friend who has seen the hole on the wall tell her she's like accuse her of being a liar. And I'm like, why are you doing this? What are you gaining from betraying your friend Judas, huh? Also, the one where she cracks an egg on her head is pretty iconic too. Because of that, I'm gonna put Ramona in 1,000 Years Duck, because yeah, why not? So up next is the Bone graphic novel series. So the thing is, I loved Bone as a kid. However, if you ask me about what the plot was or the names of the characters, I couldn't tell you anything. It was one of those books where I just skimmed through the pages looking at the illustrations, because the illustrations on Bone was so cool. My favorite was like this like panning shot of like the grandma fainting, and it just pans away and you see like the whole like canyony mountainy area. Like whoever did the illustrations clearly had like was clearly hoping that these books would be made into a movie one day, which I also hope, hopefully. So I'm gonna put Bone in I like the artwork, because the artwork in this is just very cool. So up next is the Spiderwick Chronicles, and I'm gonna keep this short and to the point. Did not read these books, but I did think the illustrations are pretty cool. The one I saw a lot as a kid is like this one where it's like a Snow White-esque princess in a glass coffin. I'm gonna put this in I like the artwork. A Bad Case of Stripes, aka Baby's First Body Horror. Like, isn't that what this book was though? It's like Junji Ito for kids. It was the plot is that this girl doesn't want to eat lima beans anymore, and her body starts to change because of it, and some of her transformations are like grotesquely disturbing. I remember one of them freaked me out so much I had to like put the book away and finish it another time. This book belongs in 1,000 Years Duck because it's very iconic, at least to my age demographic. All right, I'm starting to lose my voice a bit, so I think I'm going to speed around these next three books. Artemis Fowl, Do Not Know This Man, Doric Diaries, Like the Artwork, Amelia Bedelia, 1,000 Years Duck, Bless That Woman's Heart, She Could Never Get a Job in Real Life. Next book series is Captain Underpants, and let me tell you something. I loved the Captain Underpants books as a kid. The very last one I read was in 2006, and at the very end of that, there's like this page that says, coming soon, the next Captain Underpants book. And I was like, oh my god, I can't wait for the next one. And it didn't come out until 2012 when I was already a freshman in high school. Like, why did you wait that long, Dave Pilkey? Why? I feel like Rachel McAdams in The Notebook. But yeah, I really loved the Captain Underpants books. I didn't see the movie, but like from what I saw, it matches the style of the books very well. Yeah, Captain Underpants goes in 1,000 Years Duck. The next book series is The Enchanted Forest Chronicles, which when I first saw that in the comments, I was like, what the hell is that? So then I googled it, and I saw the first book in the series is dealing with dragons, and I was like, oh hey, I recognize that, because Dealing with Dragons was a book that our teacher read to us in school, and from what I remember, it's about this princess who wants to escape an arranged marriage, and in order to do so, she decides to live with a dragon in a cave in the woods. But then this wizard shows up and starts poisoning the dragons. I don't really remember much, but I remember like finding the story interesting when our teacher read it, so I think I'm gonna put it in I like some of it. The next book series on our list is one that needs no introduction. It's Diary of a Wimpy Kid. I feel like if you're in your 20s right now, you know what Diary of a Wimpy Kid is. This book series is like the hold it's had on pop culture since it came out is unbelievable. Like, remember how mad everyone was when they decided to recast Roderick with an actor that kind of looks like Justin Long in a bad wig? That's mean. I'm sorry to that actor. But yeah, this book is like so quintessentially people who went to elementary school in the 2000s. What's that age group called? Zillennials? Yeah, this book series is quintessentially Zillennial. And because of that, I'm going to put this in 1,000 Years Duck because I love these books. I'm pretty sure everyone does. Oh, and fun story. Diary of a Wimpy Kid was the very first book I bought for myself in the book fair in the 6th grade. And I lent it to a classmate of mine who wanted to read it. And the very next day, he returned it to me and everything was drawn over with penises. That made me mad, but you know, I've moved on. A book series that I saw get commented a lot as well is probably the Bailey School Kids book series. The basic plot summary is that these kids go to elementary school, they start noticing weird things about the adult faculty, and they start accusing them of secretly being magical creatures. It's basically that one episode of Magic School Bus where they accuse Miss Frizzle of secretly being a vampire, except it's stretched out into an entire book series. In fact, the very first book in this series is the one where they accuse their teacher of secretly being a vampire, and the teacher is very Miss Frizzle-esque in my opinion, so coincidence? I think not. The thing is, though, the magical creatures they're accusing these adults of secretly being, they look nothing like. I remember one of the books is Sea Monsters Don't Ride Motorcycles, and it's just a lady with green hair. Like, where are you seeing Sea Monster in this? I was kind of hoping that one day we'd get a Dragons Don't Teach Art class, and it's just a legit dragon, but wearing glasses and a fake nose, and the kids would go, I don't know, something about this guy makes me think he might be a dragon. But yeah, I have fond memories of this book series. My favorite one is, of course, the first one, Vampires Don't Wear Polka Dots. However, I also liked Aliens Don't Wear Braces. That one is pretty funny. So this book series goes in 1,000 Years Duck because it's very quintessential to me, and I've seen it enough in the comments to know it's quintessential to a lot of people too. The next book on this list is called Deep and Dark and Dangerous. So when I first saw it in the comments, the small hairs in the back of my neck stood up, and I went, why does that sound so familiar? So I googled it, and I saw this. In my Edward Tulane video, I had mentioned that book covers for kids during the 2000s were either really silly or incredibly depressingly sad. What I failed to mention was that there was actually a third genre, which is scary as shit. And that's what Deep and Dark and Dangerous was. This book haunted me throughout the entire runtime of elementary school. Whenever I'm in the library, You know how books are always displayed where you only see the spines? Well, for some reason this book was always front-facing and I always had to look at that cover. That damn cover. I have no idea what this book is about, no idea what the plot is. All I know is that this cover freaked me out as a kid. I'm gonna put this in I like the artwork because even though the artwork is very unsettling and creepy, it's still done very well and I think does the job it's intended to, creep you out. So yeah, I'm gonna put this in I like the artwork. Aragon. I borrowed the first Aragon book from my library in the 5th grade, and as I was about to read it, one of the very first pages to greet me is one where it was translating the made-up language in the book into English, and I had assumed that this book was going to be partially written in that made-up language, and I thought, nah, that's too much like homework, I don't want to do that, so I returned the book without ever reading it. I don't know if it's actually how it was, but young me assumed it was, so yeah. One thing I can say about Aragon is that the cover art is very beautiful, for all of them, of like the different dragons. So I'm gonna put Aragon in I like the artwork because that's all I know about these books. I heard there's gonna be a Disney Plus adaptation, so I might watch that, probably. I don't know. Okay, so one book series that probably pops up in a lot of like 90s kids remember this book series list is probably Goosebumps, and it's the same for 2000s kids as well. So me personally, I actually watched the show more than I did read the books. I think the only Goosebumps book I actually read is the one where they rescue a mermaid. I think more stuff happens in that book, but the only thing I remember is that they rescue a mermaid, and that like I was really disappointed in the TV version because they left out the mermaid. But yeah, I'm gonna put Goosebumps and I like some of it because even though I haven't read most of the books, I do really like the TV show. City of Ember. I have no feelings for this. I remember this book was everywhere this book was everywhere when I was growing up, and there was the movie coming out, and I just did not care. It just did not pique my interest at all. We did eventually watch the movie in class, and it was just, the premise is cute and all, but I just have no. Yeah, sorry people who like City of Ember, I just don't care. It goes in I do not know this man. Second to last item on our list is the Super Fudge book series by Judy Blume. And this book series was never one I chose for myself. Once again, it was read to us by our teacher, and she read all 3 of them like at certain points of that year, and she must really like these books. They're basically about this like really insufferable 12-year-old who thinks his 4-year-old brother's acting like a 4-year-old. Like, what do you expect him to act like? Genius. Hey, editor Al here. So I kind of just wanted to walk back some of the things I've said about the main character because I just remembered the plot point where Fudge eats his pet turtle. So yeah, you know, his anger is a little more understandable now. I'm gonna put Fudge in I like some of it because even though the characters weren't my favorite, the antics they got up to were very funny to listen to. And last but certainly not least, the book series that got mentioned way more times than any other book on this list, Magic Treehouse. So I never read a lot of these as a kid. I did read enough where I can come to the opinion that these books were basically Magic School Bus, but with history instead of science. It's basically about this brother and sister who use their treehouse to jump around from different time periods and stuff. They meet Da Vinci in one of the books, and I think dinosaurs are in the first one. The one I remember the most is the Titanic one. I just had a really big Titanic phase as a kid. I'm gonna put Magic Treehouse in I liked some of it because there are a lot of books in this, and I've only read a handful of them, and also I don't really remember what the characters' names are anymore. And with that, our tier list is complete. So yeah, that's our tier list. Obviously there's a lot I didn't cover. In the comments of the original post, you guys gave me so many good options, but I decided to narrow it down to 40-ish because if I had done every single thing commented, my voice would be gone for weeks. Like, oh, not good. Anyways, thanks for watching. Had a really good time making this. Also, make sure to like, comment, and subscribe. Also, if you feel like giving a little extra support, consider subscribing to my Patreon. I post content there early, and I also do behind the scenes stuff. If that interests you, consider supporting me on Patreon. And like always, thanks for watching my video, and see you guys next time. Bye!